So this next part of the presentation is going to focus on OpenSocial. And who here knows what OpenSocial is? Okay. So who's familiar with Facebook apps? Like a lot of people are. So Facebook apps were introduced in May as a way of kind of letting the developer into the Facebook ecosystem. So I guess a lot of social networks are closed off. You know, their data is inside. They may have a lot of interesting information about you, about your relationships, and who you're friends with, what your interests are, what your favorite movies and music, and all this kind of meta information about you. But until Facebook launched its API, there was really no way of getting that out. And that was a problem for a lot of developers, and a huge opportunity as it turned out. So Facebook launched their API, and it really made a lot of waves, and applications started being developed by the thousands. And so in November, Google announced the OpenSocial initiative. So the problem with Facebook apps is that there's a lot of other social networks out there besides Facebook. There's MySpace, which is still larger than Facebook. There's Meme, which is basically allows you to create your own social network, anybody. Plaxo, Bebo, and Hi5. Orchid, of course, Orchid. So the problem with that is that they're all launching their apps platforms, and they all want to capitalize on the same type of thing that Facebook took advantage of. But to the developer, like yourselves and myself, that's a problem, because I have this great Facebook application, but then I have to go over to Orchid and learn this entirely new thing, and then MySpace launches their own thing. And so I have to basically rewrite my application every time I want to port it to a different network and keep up with the API changes and everything. So OpenSocial is a common set of APIs that you can use to build a social network once and run it almost everywhere. Facebook has not signed up as an OpenSocial partner, but there's quite a few other networks who have. So we're going to go through a short presentation on how to use the basics of OpenSocial, and then hopefully have a short tutorial on how to build an OpenSocial app within Orchid. Orchid, by the way, is Google's social network, which is not too popular in the US, but has a huge audience in other countries, namely India and Brazil, and also Estonia. Go figure. Anyway, Estonia's a country. Anyway, so if you want to follow along with the tutorial, you're going to have to join Orchid, and then I'm going to have to come along and give you access to the sandbox. So that's pretty cool, because normally, like, developers have to wait like 2 weeks to get access to the sandbox, start developing their app. So I can do it for you tonight, because I have the power. So enough with the. Let's see what we can do here. So if you go to googleworkshops.googlemashups.com, you'll see that I've added a couple links under Wednesday for the OpenSocial Code Lab and the OpenSocial slide set. So we'll start with the slide set, I guess. Yeah. All right, how do I present this? Okay, well, we'll just have to wing it then. Oh, here it is. Okay. So that was my little joke, welcome to the social, because it's the whole Microsoft Zoom thing, but I never understood what that slogan meant. Okay, so I had this other set of slides that basically told you everything I did just now about why OpenSocial is beneficial for developers. Because you can write once and run anywhere, or almost anywhere. So since we're limited on time and we had to share this space with the Ajax Search and Feeds API, I'm going to just jump into what OpenSocial is and how to use it. Okay, so OpenSocial is a set of APIs. So it says one API, and it is one API, except that it's kind of split into two parts. So the first is a client-side API, and just like the Maps API, if you were at yesterday's presentation, and the Ajax Feed and Search APIs that you just saw, they're completely JavaScript-based API. So that means that you can instantiate new JavaScript objects. All you have to do is include a library, and then you're all set. So the other part is a server-side API, and this means that you can write your own little applications that run on your own server and use a RESTful API to access friend data from a container like Orchid or a container like MySpace, who's implemented the OpenSocial APIs. So actually the server-side REST API is not available at the moment. OpenSocial is actually fairly new, just launched in November. So we're still working on the API and getting everything set. So right now, all we have is JavaScript. That's perfect because it requires a lot less setup anymore. Okay, so one API, many websites. So the idea of OpenSocial is that every single website that implements OpenSocial would do so in a way that's compatible with everybody else. So that means that I can write my application and install it in Orchid, and with little to no change, install it in MySpace, install it in Bebo, install it in Hi-Fi. So that means more users for every app, because I write an app and I get all the millions of users on this network, that network, this network, and more apps for every user, because developers will be more interested in developing something when they only have to do it once instead of several times. All right. So what exactly does the API expose? Well, it exposes three main things. The first is people. And so the people includes information about me. I am the viewer. When I'm signed into an OpenSocial app and I'm looking at an OpenSocial app, I am the viewer because I'm looking at it. My friends, so I can get the friends, I can get my friends, I can get the friends of whoever's application I'm happening to look at the moment. So that's the first is people, myself and my friends. The second is activities. So once again, Facebook kind of pioneered a new kind of a phenomenon when they introduced their news feed, which it was kind of like very much like an RSS feed sort of all the activity that's happening within the network. So it's not stuff that you couldn't have found by just clicking on everybody's profile. Well, who wants to do that? When all you want to know is what's happened recently. So of course the news feed is right on the Facebook homepage, and it says who's installed this application, or who's broken up with who, or who's added what to their interests, that type of thing. And OpenSocial has a similar API for exposing activities, writing activities, and reading activities. And the last thing right there at the bottom is persistence. So persistence is, what that means is I can actually get data from the user and save it, but I don't have to have a database running on my back end. I don't have to have any kind of server-side setup whatsoever. It's just every application has this little data store that I can use to write strings into and out of. And we'll see that a little bit later in the presentation. Okay. So we were at this previous slide, we saw the people and the friends, the activities, and the persistence. And then this slide kind of goes into that a little bit more detail with what the code looks like. And it looks a little daunting at first, but then you kind of get to recognize that all of these are the same exact thing, except with different function names. So in order to get information about myself, this is what I do. I create a new request object. So very easy. var_rect equals OpenSocial.newDataRequest. I add to that request information about what I want returned to me. So in this example, the first one right here, req.add, I'm getting a new fetchPerson request. So the fetchPerson request will, as the name kind of implies, it will fetch information about one person. So I can pass in the ID of the person if I know it, or I can pass in a constant. So in this case, I'm passing in a constant called the viewer. So the viewer will be me, because, the viewer is the person who's looking at the gadget. So if I'm looking at the gadget, I'll see information about myself. If someone else is looking at the gadget, they'll see information about themselves. So that's what the viewer is. And then this just gives me a hook into when the data is returned, what it will be called. So Pamela kind of touched on that a little bit in her Ajax feeds talk when she was talking about callback functions. So what I'm doing is I'm sending a request to the container, to the social network, Orchid or MySpace or Bebo, and I'm saying, I want you to fetch me this information. But instead of stalling the application, we're going to do it all asynchronous-like. We're going to not stall the application, but rather let it tell us when it's ready to give us that information. So we're going to see that a little bit later. I don't have that. You'll see that req.send callback. So, okay, getting a little ahead of myself. But the viewer is just like the little tag that my object will be called when it comes back. So the next one is the exact same thing, except instead of fetch person, it's fetch people. So what this expects is either a constant again, or an array of IDs. If I want information on these two people, I can send in their IDs. Or if I want, for example, my friends, I can send in a constant, which I do here, which is viewer friends. So if I'm the viewer, it's going to return information about my friends. Very easy. The exact same setup. I add the new fetch people request, and I pass in a little string that tells me what my data is going to be called. Same exact thing with the fetch activities request. So I pass in, I want to see my activities, so I pass in the viewer, and then give it a little label. And then the fetch person app data request. I hate that function name, awful. But that's basically our persistence API. So the app data, this is the information that my application has stored in the persistence layer. That's how I get to that data, by using the fetch app data request. Once again, I'm passing in the viewer because I want to get my data. We do have read-only access to other people's data as well. So you could pass in, for example, the ID of a friend, I believe, and get access to his data. The one thing that differs about the persistence is the keys, because I could store any number of different types of information in my persistence layer. So I need to tell the function exactly what I want returned. And at the very end, after we add these things to our request object, we send the request. And this callback function that we pass into the request is called when our data is aggregated and returned to us, which I believe I see more in the next slide. All right, perfect. So this is an actual, it's not the full thing, but it's the full script, which is the most interesting part. So let's start at the beginning. Gadgets.util.register onload handler. So if any of you are familiar with events in HTML, the body onload, so that gets called when the entire DOM is loaded. Well, that's the same type of thing here. So I want getViewer to be called after the entire gadget is loaded. So I pass in a function getViewer. So that means that the function getViewer is going to be called when everything loads. And here I define getViewer. So you can see exactly what I did on the previous slide. I create a new data request. I say I want a person object. In this case, I want me, me being the person who's looking at the gadget. So the fetch viewer, if I'm looking at the gadget, I'll get information about myself. If Trevor's looking at it, get information about himself. And Pamela's looking at it, she'll get information about herself, and so on. I label it viewer, and then I send this request. So the application stops. It hits the end of the function, has nowhere to go. But thankfully, we've called this, we've given this callback called handle response. So when the data is available, handle response comes in. We have the data object, it's passed in automatically, and we can get the data. So in this example, we're getting the viewer object, data.getViewer. This is the same string that we passed in up here. And so this returns an OpenSocial.person object. And so we'll get into a little bit more of the API in a few minutes. But the person object, for example, has a display name property. And that's like, for example, mine would be Jason Cooper, and then Pamela Fox, and so on. So, and then I can do whatever I want with this data. I can dynamically modify my DOM to say hello, Jason, or whatever, or alert it. I don't know. Do any number of things with it. All right. Get friends. Get friends is the exact same thing. You see that instead of passing in a fetch person, I fetch people, and then I pass in the constant viewer friends right there. The handle response data gets that. It returns a collection object, an OpenSocial.collection object. And so from there, I'm able to iterate. I can either convert that to an array and access it just like I would access any other array in JavaScript, or I can use this .each function and pass in my little inline function that once again would iterate through every friend of mine and do whatever. In this case, I did the exact same thing I did on the other slide. For every person, I get the name, and I can say, I can output the name and say these are your friends, or I can do something much more interesting, that type of thing. Okay, so I'm not going to get into activities too much, just because for one we're short on time, and for another I don't think they're working right now, unfortunately. So I'll get into what's far more interesting probably is the save data without a server. So why is this useful? Well, I've seen several uses for it, but for one thing, I mean, not every social network has certain fields, or not every social network has the fields that I want it to have. What if I'm trying to do some really advanced analysis on people's colors and what they mean or something? I don't know. So I want to get their favorite color, but of course, MySpace may have an Orca doesn't have a favorite color for the field. So in this case, I open my new data request at the top. I add my favorite color, it's a string, purple, whatever. So then I add to that a new update person app data request. So that says that I want to update this person's app data, their persistence layer. And the person in question is the viewer, which is me, if I'm looking at the gadget. We pass in the name of the field that's going to be placed in it, and then the actual data that's going to be placed in it. So what this says is, I want the color field to be updated with the favorite color, which of course is purple up there, and then pass that in and then store it. I don't have to worry about anything else. I don't have to worry about where it's being stored. I just need to know that it's being stored and I can get it back anytime I want. That's the beauty of the simplicity of it all. And then, of course, the next idea is to get that back. So in this case, we use the new fetch person, so that means I'm going to get it back. I pass in the string that I labeled it as, which is color. And then this one actually requires a callback because once again I'm sending it to the server, so I need to wait for it to give it back. And when it does, it calls my callback function, here handle request my app data, and then I can get it. So var favorite color equals data.get data, whatever. So I've just stored my favorite color purple, and then the next time I come back, I just got it right back.
Is your favorite color really purple?
It is.
You don't think it's a little weird?
Funny story. I was really into Donatello as a kid. The turtle, right. So it started from that.
And Brad was too. I never remember which one's my favorite. They each have their unique personalities.
Right. You seem like a Raphael.
You think so?
The way you pull in the red balls. Okay, so I showed you in the previous slide, I showed you the script tag. But what does an OpenSocial app look like? Well, does this look familiar to anyone?
Did anyone attend? Who attended the guidance workshop?
Who came in on Monday? It is XML, but it's a special format of XML. It's a gadget, right? A Google gadget. So you'll notice that it starts with the XML declaration at the top, and then we go into the module. The module tells you basically that it's a gadget. And then we have the module prefs, which we can give the title of the gadget, which is a photo board in this case. I'm building something right now. And I can give it the other common attributes that gadgets can have, like the author meta information, or the width and the height. A little bit more about the size in a minute. And then, of course, we have the familiar content section with the CData, and we can put anything, any HTML, CSS, JavaScript that we want in the CData, just like we did in the gadgets tutorial. So it makes gadgets look a whole lot more appealing when all of a sudden you're used to seeing something that runs on my iGoogle homepage or whatever. And then of course, Pamela had mentioned in her presentation, you can add it to any site that you want. You can add it to your Blogger, for example, in a little sidebar, any gadget, or you can add it to any other side that you control. And now all of a sudden the same format is being used to add really unique social applications to all these social networks. So it's pretty neat.
So the only thing that makes this an OpenSocial gadget
Right.
is that required feature
Right.
equals.
So the module prefs has a little, like, you can specify unique requirements for this particular. So it's used to, for example, include libraries like the tabs library that Pamela mentioned on Monday. You need the require feature tabs, and it just pulls in different libraries. So this actually pulls in the OpenSocial. So it's gonna, if you don't use the requires, it's gonna say, what the heck is OpenSocial? So that just pulls in the OpenSocial library and the gadgets library, which we'll get into in just 1 second. All right. So it is a gadget, but are there any differences? As a matter of fact, there are a few. First, as Pamela mentioned, the requires feature. OpenSocial 0.7, you need to tell it to bring in the OpenSocial library. The second is, and we didn't get too much into this, I'm kind of glad because I never liked these anyway, but there's a couple of convenience functions that the gadget library always had. In case document.getElement by ID was too hard to type, they replaced it with the underscore GEL, which kind of looks kind of weird. So those functions are gone. You can use the document.getElement by ID instead. But one of the convenience functions in gadgets that was extremely cool was the IG fetch XML content, which did the cross-domain pulling of XML, similar to how the Ajax feed API works, and allowed me to pull any XML I wanted from any source into my gadget where I could parse it and do whatever. So that's no longer there, but we have an even cooler function called gadgets.io.makeRequest. And makeRequest can do not only XML, but we can do HTML, so I can just pull in a string of HTML text and set my inner HTML property to do whatever I want with it. I can pull in a JSON object, which Pamela touched on what JSON is. This really neat little, I don't know if we have it anymore. This really neat little JavaScript object that I can pull in, and then all of a sudden I have this really like rich thing that I can interact with that's very similar, like it's a JavaScript object. And one of the neater things is the multiple views. So on Facebook, you have this little profile. You have on your profile the application, and it's very similar to like a gadget because it's really small and such. I think I can go ahead and break out of this. So this is my Orchid profile, and we'll go to my profile here. I don't think I have nothing too interesting. So I have a Google image in my photo board. Super Pokemon. I thought that was funny. That's actually what my manager is working on right now. And it's where you get monsters and you can attack other people. And but of course it's kind of run in its own little really limited space on your profile. And in the case of Orchid, you can only display 3 at a time, and then all these others are linked to below. So that's kind of annoying when you want to have this really rich, cool application, but you're constrained to be, however many pixels wide. So there's a separate, and this is called the profile view of the gadget. There's a separate view, so you see the little app section over here. So you can click photo board, for example, and you see a completely different, the app expands to fill the size of the screen. And what's really neat is you notice that the photo board gadget looks different. On the profile view, it was a picture of of the Google logo. But really, on the big canvas view, you see a little file input. So this is just a work in progress. Very much so. But you can see that I can get what view I'm looking at and display something different. So the idea of the photo board gadget, by the way, is to display like a slideshow of images in your profile view, and then in the expanded canvas view, you can actually upload new images and share them with other people and comment on them and decide which ones are going to be shown in your profile view. So gadgets and iGoogle don't have that just yet, but so that's one of the unique things about OpenSocial. So I believe that was basically my last slide. Okay. Yeah. So with that, we have about half an hour to do a short little tutorial. Any of you who attended Monday's session will already kind of have a head start. So whoever wants to do the tutorial will have to will have to log into Orchid. And if they're not a user, they'll have to create a profile. I know it's kind of annoying. But, and then I can sign you up into the Orchid sandbox after that. So,
You have a question?
Yeah.
sure.
So what's the level of security that you apply to this application? I mean, if I develop an application for OpenSocial, what can I do? Can I change the name of the person, or what is the restriction?
Okay, that's a good question. I believe that primarily, at least on the JavaScript API, it's very read-only. So I can get the display name, but I can't set the display name. REST APIs might have more on that, but the spec hasn't really been finalized yet, and so I can't really talk about that with any good detail because I just haven't seen it yet. But in terms of modifying data and everything, JavaScript is primarily like a read-only API, except for, of course, the persistence layer. And of course, the permission settings on the actual container will apply to the application. So, for example, if I can't view this person's interests or picture or whatever because I'm not their friend, then my application won't be able to either, because the container will throw an error and say, you don't have that kind of access.
So basically, each piece of the information that the user has on the website, you can access, you can get it, right?
Sort of. So right now, there's some built-in, basically every social network has a name. So there's a function for get name, and then there's a function for get the profile picture, for example. But it's up to the social network because Orchid has my favorite turn-ons, but Facebook, for example, does. I know Facebook's not OpenSocial, but it's the only other one I'm familiar with. Anyway, so there's a way for containers, individual containers, to extend what's available, and they'll say has feature, turn-ons, and then from there I can check that programmatically and say, oh, it has this feature. Okay, I can grab it. So yeah, that's a container thing, like a container-specific thing. And, hopefully that all of them will extend their containers to support getting that extensibility there. Other questions before we begin the tutorial? Okay, perfect. So if everyone who doesn't have who has an Orchid account already, I guess is a good question. Okay, oh, good. Perfect. So unfortunately, this is going to be very tedious, but I'm going to go around. Yes, there's a special sandbox URL, which is fairly easy to remember. It's sandbox.orchid.com. And so you'll see the URL there. So anyone whose account is not enabled will be redirected to orchid.com. So that means if you're able to stay on sandbox.orchid.com, you should be in good shape. Let me know if there's any problems there. Looks like everyone succeeded, but just want to make sure.
Put the URL. Can you put the URL?
Oh, sure. I'll be right there, Elliot. Accessories, address book.
Run. Just start run.
Just do run notepad.
That's not how I work. Okay.
ITS forces you to work the way they want.
Okay, now how do I increase this?
Format font.
All right, perfect. I'm very much a Mac user, so.
Yeah, you suck.
All right, that should be big enough, hopefully.
I still can't see it.
Like Trevor, you need to go back to the optometrist.
So how do they know if they can error? If it does not work that? So if it keeps them on the sandbox, then you're good?
Yep, that's right.
Alright, so you go, we're good? Anyone? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe try Elliot down to
I think since you signed in with that. All right. Anybody else having any problems? Everyone good? Okay. Perfect. Okay, so ORCID applications are gadgets, special gadgets, because they have that little requires thing. So you need to actually build a gadget in order to add an application to your profile. So if you were here on Monday, we talked about the gadget editor as being kind of a very convenient way of hosting your gadgets. Gadgets just need to be hosted somewhere on the public web. So you could, if you could bring up an FTP client and go into Aludra or whatever, or the SCF, or you could use the Google Gadget Editor, use the free hosting available, or you could do any number of things. For the sake of this presentation, I'd suggest just going into the Google Gadget Editor. So just do a Google search for the Google Gadget Editor. And it's the top link. It's going to link you to the Getting Started guide of the Google Gadgets docs. And it's right here at the very bottom. It's the Google Gadget Editor. And it already has some stuff filled in. So, really quickly, let's go in and put in that requires tag right there. So let's close our module prefs and put in requires feature equals OpenSocial dash 0.7. And then this is a social gadget. It's a very uninteresting social gadget because all it's going to do is show hello world. I don't know why you'd want that as an app, but hey, it could be the next big thing. So once you're done there, go ahead and save it. You should be, if you logged into your ORCID in the same browser, you should be able to save. Otherwise,
Not logged into a Gmail account. Log in.
Is it Gmail or Google?
Google.
Well, they should be if they're in ORCID, hopefully.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll have to go back and do this again. But anyway, just give this something like my first social gadget. I don't know, whatever, .xml. And then you'll see that it's successfully saved. And not only is it saved, but it's hosted. You can save it as whatever name you want. It won't be important. So, once it's saved, you can click the name in the upper right-hand corner of the gadget right here. And it's going to open a new tab. And it's going to show you the XML. Copy this URL right here. So Control-C. All right. This is, okay. So the latest push to the ORCID sandbox kind of did this really dumb thing where the apps, this is how you add an app. You click Apps, Edit. But if you don't have an app, you're not going to see that. It's really annoying. So here's what I would recommend doing. Is you go to sandbox.orchid.com/myapps.aspx. Let me copy that really big. Okay, maybe not that big.
Yeah, so you just change requires to required. See your requires tab? Which is required.
All right.
And check your features.
Okay, so if everyone goes to this URL when you're in the sandbox, you should be able to see an add application by URL text
should be
field.
inside the module.
So anyone not there yet? Okay, perfect.
So close the module press thing. Is it? Can you show me what the required feature tag looks like again?
Yeah, sure.
What's the OpenSocial?
OpenSocial dash 0.7.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so just close the module press tag after that.
All right. So copy the original URL that your gadget is hosted at, and paste it into the text field. And then click Add Application. And then you're going to have to click Add Application again, and a third time. It's like Windows Vista. Yes, I'm really sure I want to add this application. Okay, and of course I have a ton of applications, so mine will appear at the very bottom. There it is. Yours should appear, you should see a little apps header now on the left with whatever.
So what's the sandbox allow us to do?
The sandbox is a complete working OpenSocial container. So,
Just do this. If you don't do it, you can't do it.
right, you can't add applications.
That's what I was.
Okay. Sure.
I'm not able to get that app.
All right. So you're in the sandbox. Okay. So go to home. Highlight home. Just the word home again, and replace that with capital M and Y, capital A, GPS. There we go. Paste the URL. It's just really, I don't know why they did that. That's just a bug. It'll be fixed. Okay. How's everyone else doing? Pretty good? Okay, so one other thing I'm going to clue you into. So all gadgets are cached, and that's kind of a problem, right? So here I am testing my new gadget, and I don't want to have to wait an hour to see ever change it. Big problem. So there's a query string parameter that you can pass in called BPC, and that stands for bypass cache. So type in ampersand BPC equals 1 at the end of your URL. Doesn't matter what your URL is, just add ampersand BPC equals 1 at the end, and it'll just take you right back to the same page you're at, which is what you want it to do.
What does that do?
So typically gadgets are cached, so that means that every time I make a change, I'm going to have to wait like an hour for the cache to reset. And if I'm in heavy development, I don't want to do one change an hour. It's hurt my productivity. So this just completely destroys the cache and brings in a fresh gadget every time you reload.
I got a page now from.
Okay. It's not found. Okay. Okay. Try going to Hello World. Yeah. And then try putting it back there. Ampersand.
What are you guys getting?
Perfect. So gadgets are cached. So that means that since gadgets are cached, that means you won't be able to see your changes.
Yeah, go to the add application page.
Pulls in the fresh copy of the gadget.
So how do you do the add apps page?
Replace. Yeah. So just replace home with my apps.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Alright, so try it. Let's try it there. Dude, we keep getting the bad server error.
Okay. Let me see your gadget.
Maybe the OpenSocial browser. No, we reload that.
Okay.
Or we can show you that.
Okay, yeah, here it is. This is closed twice. So
How does your preview? I can delete this.
no,
No, yeah, you want the fire to be absolutely inside
the preview won't work because OpenSocial is.
No, I know it's working.
Oh,
The
okay.
error
Right,
is
but
working.
it would still give you an error if you were using an actual OpenSocial. Yeah.
Alright. Maybe you're real.
Oh. This is, yeah, this is,
Maybe change your,
yeah, let's do that. So where's your, where's your?
Hi, you just made that?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Creating social? Not yet. Start the back.
Perfect. And let's save it as.
Yeah, it is. You're like the, right. That would probably be actually not the hard one to be social. It would be like your friends are 99%
And click add application.
You've not added any applications. Okay, so let's try add
Good. And then go ahead and click on that. And you'll see hello world.
So add application.
And add an ampersand.
Yeah.
Ampersand? BPC? No, B. C. Yeah, that'll pull in a fresh copy of Gadget. All right, well, I guess we're not going to get too much into my tutorial. That's okay. So we've we've added this parameter at the very end of our URL. So what that means is that we can go back into our Google Gadget Editor right here, and let's say change this to something like I love OpenSocial.
I love Jason. Is that awkward?
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, and the beauty of the BPC parameter is that I can refresh, and it's pulling in a completely new copy of my gadget, and so I see the updated gadget market there. The exclamation points look like L's. So, that's good? Okay, so I had this really cool little tutorial, like 9-step or 8-step thing, and if you still want to do it on your own time, you can. It's on Google Workshops.GoogleMashups.com. Obviously, we're not going to have any time to do it together here, but we can do something. We can do something. Let's play around here. So, as we've kind of stressed in the past tutorials, code.google.com is your friend. This is where we have all of our docs for all of our APIs and tools. And project hosting, of course, can't forget that. So click on APIs and developer tools, and you'll see a huge list of all the stuff. And we're going to want to go all the way down to OpenSocial. It's in alphabetical order, hopefully. Oh no, I missed it. Where is it? There it is. Okay, it is sort of I don't know, kind of annoying. Okay, and go to the docs. So here we are. So the docs, if you care to read them, will reiterate basically everything I've presented to you: the people, activities, persistence, what you're able to do with it, whatever. We have some preliminary RESTful stuff. This is the server-side APIs that aren't finalized yet. But we're concerned with the JavaScript at this point. So the two things that we're really interested in here is this right here, the API reference, which will open in a new tab, and also right here, the gadgets API reference. So OpenSocial is a gadget, but it's a special kind of gadget, and it's the first type of gadget to use this new gadgets library. So instead of using the really awkward underscore functions, they've really built it into its own little package, its own little library that you can pull in. So you'll see that this is the API reference page for gadgets, which you can get to by clicking Gadgets API reference. And you'll see there's a number of different classes here, or different parts. So the one that we're particularly interested in at this point is the gadgets.util class. And that has this register onload handler. And remember, the register onload handler is like the body onload callback. So it tells the gadget when to start running, basically. So let's go ahead and modify our original gadget. Let's delete this string and replace it with a script tag. Type equals application / JavaScript.
What is that?
But it replaces type / oh, yeah, type / I'm not.
Type / JavaScript?
Yeah. What's wrong with it?
Oh, I've never seen that before. Hey, can you increase your text file?
Sure. All right. Hopefully that should be easy to read. Okay, so we're going to use this new gadgets.util. We can see register onload handler is a static method, so that means it belongs to a class, and we don't have to instantiate anything. So we'll just go back to our gadget here, wherever it is, and we'll type in gadgets.util.register onload handler, or you can, if it's too much trouble, you can just copy it here. See, I already made a mistake. I capitalized the R. It's a lowercase r. So I'll go and fix that right now. And we'll pass into that the name of a function that we want to run when the gadget first loads. So in this case, I'll just create a new function called init. I'll pass, and let me create the function now. So this is, once again, a fully working gadget, but it won't do anything. It'll just call init, which is blank. So that's not any fun. So let's do something else. Let's have it print out my name. That sounds like fun, right? Okay, so we're going to use the new fetch person request, or whatever it is. So once again, the API reference is your friend. This one would be in the OpenSocial API reference in the data request. Yeah, the new fetch person request, right? Okay, so let's go back. We're gonna first we need to create a new request object. So var, so using this kind of little format you saw earlier, var req equals OpenSocial dot create new data request, something like that. So this lives under OpenSocial, so let's see what OpenSocial has. There it is. So it's new data request somewhere. Here it is. So this creates, as you can see, it's a static method also, and it creates, it passes back to us a new OpenSocial.dataRequest object, which is what we want. So OpenSocial.newDataRequest. Right? Now we need to tell the new data request exactly what we want it to get, what data we want to get back. So we're going to do req dot, this is once again in the OpenSocial, so let's go back to the data request thing, and we see this add function, which is exactly what we want. Okay, and what do we want to add? We want to add a new fetch person request. So req dot, which we saw right here, a new fetch person request. All right, but we're not done yet, because new fetch person request expects a couple of parameters. The second one is optional. I won't get into that right now, but it does expect an ID. So let's go ahead and give it an ID. So I'm going to have to pull up my, to get the constant, just for the sake of brevity. OpenSocial.dataRequest.personID.viewer.
You'd like copy and paste with your head.
That would be nice, huh? So I'll let you guys copy that. That one didn't even come in big, did it? Okay, so that's new req.newFetchPersonRequest, OpenSocial.dataRequest.personID.viewer. That's just a constant. So that's not like a method call or anything. That's just saying get the object that refers to me That's a very long way of saying that. Okay. And then we're going to pass it in a key. So this key can be, this key can be anything we want it to be. This just gives us a way to get that, to refer to that data that comes back to us. So in this case, viewer, since we're requesting data about the viewer. All right, and hopefully I did that right. All right, now we need to send the request. So we just do request.send. So let's see, here's an opportunity for someone to earn a stress ball. If they can answer me why this won't work very well. I mean, this will work, but I won't see anything. Why not? Can anyone answer? Starts with a C. I'm missing a something.
Come on.
You. Very good. You already got a ball, didn't you? All right, you're going to get a mug.
Nice.
For being such a nice guy.
Double up.
Okay. So that's right. So basically I'm sending my request, but it's an asynchronous call, and the data is going to go, my function is going to end, and the data is going to come back from the server, and nothing's going to happen to it. Why? Because I didn't say I wanted anything to happen to it. So I need to put in my send function the name of a function I want to call when I get it back. So in this case, we'll say handle person data. It's very similar to the callback function that we put into the register onload handler, right? Same type of thing. And of course, we need to add that function, handle person data. And this one actually has a parameter in it. We can name it whatever we want. This is just the object that will contain the data that we requested. All right. So this is a data request. This is a data response object right here. So of course we could go back into our API docs, and we see a whole data response object right here, and we can look and see what type of functions are available. So first we have the had error.
Boring.
Yeah. So, but that's a good thing to check for, right? Because we could just pretend like all our code is great and won't ever break, but it's really not going to happen. So let's do a conditional. If not data.had error. Then we'll say var person data is equal to data.getKey viewer. So I believe getKey was the other method here. Yeah, or just get, I'm sorry, just get. And then you pass in the key. So you'll notice that this viewer thing right here is the string that matches this thing way over here. So we could have named this whatever we want as long as it equals that. All right?
Show the name, show the name.
All right, I'm getting to that. So unfortunately, we still have another layer of object to go to because it returns an OpenSocial.response item. Isn't that fun? So let's go to response item. All right, there we go. We get the get data. So that's what we want. So var person data.get viewer .get data. Yeah.
I don't get it. Data get data. Hey, that's like palindrome tracking, right?
Not really.
No.
Okay, so we've requested a fetch person request, right? So we expect to get a person object back. And it just so happens that we do, because OpenSocial has a person class right here. And so after we call this get data, now person refers to a person object.
So what if the social network is for animals? Does this not work?
Probably. I think probably saving that for a 2.0 thing.
Yeah.
By the way, the API is only in 0.7 right now, so it's very much still beta. But thankfully, the API is kind of frozen, at least for the most part. So the first consumer launch, so right now, everybody has to be whitelisted in order to access the sandbox. So obviously, normal people who don't have access to me won't be able to add any apps to their profile.
You're not normal.
But I apologize if I offended anyone by that. No, so you might be asking, well, when then am I going to be able to give my OpenSocial app to my friend? Well, the answer is if your friend's in Estonia, it'll be next week. We're staggering the launch a little bit. Estonia is next week, and then we're going to follow up with the bigger markets, India and Brazil. And then the other containers have their own rollout plans, but they're going to follow suit probably.
I think all of my friends are in Estonia.
Yeah, well, RNA, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so we have a person object. Now we can get his name. So var person name.
His name.
Okay, I'm sorry. We can get his or her name by saying person data dot, what was the call? It's get display name right here. So this, as you can see, it returns a string, and the gets a text display name for this person, guaranteed to return a useful string. Well, that's good. Dot get display name right here. So what do we want to do with this name? I would normally alert it at this case, but
No. Can we make it blink?
no, I don't think so. That just gives people seizures and causes all sorts of problems.
Everybody likes blinking.
All right. Well, we'll add that later. In the meantime, we'll just add like a little empty div and give it an ID content. Like that. So this will be our HTML that we'll use to populate something. So let's get a handle on that div that we just created. Sorry. So var content div equals document dot get element by ID content. And then we can say content div dot inner HTML and give it a little h1 tag here.
Or a blink tag?
Is it a blink tag?
Yeah, just right blink.
Whatever.
Oh. Yeah, do it. Do it.
Hello, space. And then we're going to concatenate to the string the person name that we have up above. And then we're going to close our blink tag. Oops. And then our h1 tag. All right. So hopefully I did this right, because it would be kind of embarrassing if I didn't. All right. So everyone almost there? Go ahead and save it again. I'll return to this. I just want to see if this works so I don't screw anyone else up. So we're just going to refresh. Oh no. Okay. So that didn't work. Oh no. This is why. Okay. So if anyone can help me figure out what went wrong, I'll give you once again a little mug.
I think you might need double quotes so that the person name is actually recognized as a variable.
No, correct.
Yeah, because I'm closing the string and then I'm passing in the person name, which is a string. So
We do actually not know.
no.
Why don't we just see if we actually got in there? Just alert.
We'll see.
We might have had an error.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So else alert. Error. Oh no. Oh no.
Well, we know it's not a caching problem. All right. Well, good news is we don't have an error.
Go to the error console. Do you have any errors? Do you have any JavaScript?
Where's my? Oh, there it is.
Scroll. OpenSocial is not defined.
OpenSocial is not defined. Well, that's a problem and a half, isn't it? All right. Well.
Wait, clear your error console? Okay.
Okay. So it looks like.
Okay, let's clear it and refresh and make sure it's right. That's the same error. Okay, and refresh.
was very embarrassing. Sorry about this, guys.
Okay, let's check. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like I'm not defining my OpenSocial, which is weird.
Required, it's required.
Is it
That's why
required?
everybody wrote
Yes,
that?
required.
Yeah.
Oops. Require feature.
It's okay, I correctly got it.
Sorry about that, guys. Okay, this should work now, maybe. Ah,
Yay!
there we go.
No, it's something like that.
Okay, you can see it's blinking. That's thanks to our friend Pamela here, who requested that we add the blink tag.
This is
Okay.
why they pay me the big money.
Hopefully no one from the epilepsy here. I don't think it's going that fast, so it should be okay. So, let's pass 10 already. 10, my favorite binary number.
No, it's 10, 11.
Oh, it's not my favorite.
Mine's
but it's
11,
pretty good.
11. I always piss the clock when I see it.
Okay.